upon a time, there was a grandfather and a grandmother who lived together. Every day, the grandfather would go to the mountains to mow the lawn, and the grandmother would go to the river to wash her clothes. One day, while the grandmother was sitting by the river, a big peach washed up from the water. Excited by its beauty, the grandmother wanted to take it home as a souvenir for her grandfather. However, the peach was too far away for her to reach. In a moment of clever thinking, the grandmother clapped her hands and sang a chant, causing the peaches to flow towards her. She picked them up and put them in her tub with the laundry. When the grandfather finally returned home in the evening, the grandmother showed him the peaches and mentioned that they should share them and eat them together. The grandfather was surprised and asked where the beautiful peaches came from. The grandmother explained that she had picked them up from the river. The grandfather was delighted and took a peach in each hand, admiring them. Suddenly, one of the peaches cracked open, and a baby was born from inside with a loud cry. The grandfather and grandmother were shocked, but also filled with joy. They named the baby Momotaro and took good care of him as he grew up. Momotaro became a strong and gentle young man, beloved by his grandparents. One day, he decided to test his strength by going to Ojigetane Island to confront the wicked demons who lived there. On his journey, Momotaro was joined by a dog, a monkey, and a pheasant who became his loyal companions. Together, they reached Ojigetane Island and defeated the ogress who guarded it, obtaining their treasures. Momotaro and his companions returned home victorious, greeted by his grateful grandparents. The story ends with Momotaro asking his companions how they found the experience of fighting the demons. The dog barked happily, the monkey cackled and showed its teeth, and the pheasant cawed and performed somersaults. The scene was set against a beautiful backdrop of clear, blue skies and blooming cherry blossoms in the garden. Urashima Taro, a fisherman from Tango, went fishing every day to provide for his parents. One day, on his way back from a fishing trip, he witnessed a group of children mistreating a small turtle. Unable to bear the sight, Urashima intervened and bought the turtle from the children. He released the turtle back into the sea, after which it thanked him and offered to show him the legendary Ryugu under the sea. Urashima accepted the offer and was taken to the dragon's palace, a magnificent underwater palace filled with precious gems and extraordinary sights. For 3 years, Urashima enjoyed the wonders of Ryugu and completely lost track of time. But eventually, he felt a yearning for his hometown and wished to return. Reluctantly, Oduheim, the ruler of the dragon's palace, allowed him to leave but warned him never to open a jade box she gave him. When Urashima reached the surface, he was shocked to find that not only had 300 years passed, but his home and family were also nowhere to be found. Disheartened, Urashima opened the jade box, and a cloud emerged, edging him instantly. He realized that the box contained the essence of his life. Reflecting on his past, Urashima listened to a boat song in the distance and longed for the spring sea once more. Realizing the futility of his desire, Urashima understood that he could never return to the past. With a sense of melancholy, he remembered his time in Ryugu and the magical experiences he had there. The story of Urashima Taro teaches us about the fleeting nature of time and the consequences of longing for the past. It warns against the dangers of trying to hold on to something that is no longer within reach. Through Urashima's journey, we see the beauty and wonder of Ryugu, but also the sadness and regret that he faces upon returning to his changed world. Ultimately, the story reminds us to appreciate the present moment and not dwell on what we cannot change. The Mouse's bride Meso Shuya once upon a time, in the storehouse of a house, there was a rich mouse who lived a very wealthy life. He had no children, so he prayed to God, and finally a daughter was born. The child grew and grew bright and beautiful. She became the best daughter in Japan, with no one to compare to in the Mouse Kingdom. At this point, there was no one else who could be a husband for the girl. The Mouse's father and mother said that since their daughter was the best daughter in Japan, she should have the best husband in Japan. So when asked who was the greatest person in the world, it was none other than the sun, who came from high in the sky, shining brightly over the whole world. So the father asked his mother. He took his daughter and went up to the sky. Then he said to the sun, Son, you are the greatest person in the world. Please take my daughter as your bride. He bowed politely. Then the sun smiled and said, Thank you very much, but there are people in the world who are greater than me. His father was surprised. Is there anyone greater than you? Who is it? It's the clouds. No matter how much I try to fly in the sky, when the clouds come out, it's no good. So his father went to the clouds. Spider, you are the greatest person in the world. Please take my daughter as your bride. Thank you very much. There are people in the world who are greater than me. Well, is there anyone greater than you? Who is it? That's the wind. I can't compete with being blown away by the wind. I see. So Dad went out to the wind this time. Wind, you are the greatest person in the world. Please take my daughter as your wife. I appreciate that. But there are greater things in the world than me. Dad was surprised. Is there anyone greater than you? Who is it? That's a wall. Walls are the only ones I can't blow away. I see. So Dad went out to the wall again. Wall, you are the greatest person in the world. Please take my daughter as your wife. I appreciate that. But there are greater things in the world than me. Dad was surprised. I did. Well, is there anyone greater than you? Who is it? It's no one. Just that mouse. No matter how square my face is and how hard I try, the mouse just eats through my body, makes a hole and passes through. So I can't beat you, mouse. I see, said the mouse father. This time he was really impressed and clapped his hands. I never realized that before. So we are the greatest in the world. Thank you very much, he said, and went home proudly. And when he got home, he immediately made the neighbor's Netasilk mouse, the son-in-law, to be his daughter's son-in-law. The young son-in-law and his wife lived together happily and took good care of their father and mother, and they gave birth to many children, and Okura's mouse family prospered even more. Kentaro Kusuyamasaku, there once was a strong child named Kentaro. He was born deep in the mountains of Sagami and lived with his mother, Yamamba. Kentaro was born very strong. By the time he was 7 or 8, he could lift a millstone or a fur bale with ease. He could wrestle most adults and not lose. When he had no more opponents in the neighborhood, he became bored. Kentaro ran around usual, a big bear came out of the tree. The bear looked at me with wide eyes. "Who is it that is destroying my forest?" Kintaro said. "How can you be a bear and not know who Kintaro is?" He threw down his matsuri and suddenly grappled with the bear. Then he threw him to the ground with a thud with his footprints. Puma put his hands on the ground in parallel. Puma apologized and became Kintaro's retainer. Kintaro's retainer. After that, rabbits, monkeys, and deer followed in droves. Kintaro-san, please make me your retainer too. Kintaro nodded his head and said. Kintaro nodded his head and made them all his guests. Every morning Kintaro brought his mother a lot of rice balls. Kintaro's mother would make him lots of rice balls. Kintaro would go out into the forest. Kintaro would whistle and call out, "Come on, come on, come on, come on." And out came the bears and the deer and the monkeys and the rabbits and all sorts of things. Kintaro roamed around the mountain with these retainers, nichinachi, nichinachi. One day, walking along the path, eventually they came to a place where there was soft grass, and they all put their feet out and lay down on the grass. It felt so good to lay down. Kintaro said, "Go ahead and wrestle, and as a reward," Kintaro said, "I'll give you these rice balls as a reward." With shaggy hands, he dug out the ground and made a ring. First, the monkey and the rabbit worked together, and then the deer got into the act. The hare caught the monkey's tail and tried to carry it out of the ring. The monkey was so frustrated, he grabbed the hare's long ears and yanked on them. The rabbit was in pain, so there was no contest, and neither rabbit got a prize. This time, the hare became the judge, and the deer and the bear fought. The deer was quickly overturned by the bear, antlers and all. Kintaro clapped his hands, saying it was funny, funny. Finally, the bout was over. Kintaro stood in the middle of the ring. Kintaro stood there in the middle of the ring and spread out his arms, saying, "Come on, let's see what you can do." Then a rabbit, a monkey, a deer, and last but not least, a bear. But they were all rolled away from him. What a weakling! Kintaro told him to come at them all at once. The rabbit took hold of the rabbit's leg, and the monkey put his hand on the bear's neck in frustration, and all hell broke loose, and the deer pushed at his waist, and the bear clutched his chest. They all tried to knock Kintaro down, but they just couldn't do it. But they just couldn't get him down. Kintaro was so frustrated that he swung his body around and around. And then the rabbit, the monkey, and the bear all fell to the ground at once. And the bear too. They all rolled out of the ring, and all of them fell out of the ring at once. Everyone was rubbing their backs and rubbing their shoulders, and rubbing his shoulders. Kintaro, you poor thing, you've lost to me, so I'm going to share with you. He lined up the rabbits, monkeys, deer, and bears in a circle around him. I sat in the middle, and we shared the diaper and ate it together. After a while, Kintaro said, "Oh, that was good." Then he said, "Let's go home." And he took everyone home again. On the way back, they played running games in the forest and playing tag on the rocks. They came to the edge of a big valley. The water was gurgling and flowing very fast, but unfortunately, there was no bridge. Everyone said, "What should we do?" Kintaro looked around with a nonchalant look on his face and said, "What do you care?" Kintaro looked around with a nonchalant look on his face. Just on the of the river. Kintaro threw away Masakari and suddenly put his hands on the cedar tree. Then he pushed a couple of times, and there was a terrible sound, and the tree fell so heavily on the river that a great bridge was formed. Kintaro again carried Masakari on his shoulders and went across first. Everyone looked at each other and whispered to each other, "You are naturally very strong." A lumberjack was hiding on a rock over there, watching the scene. He saw Kintaro carelessly push down a large tree. He rolled his eyes and wondered where this mysterious child came from. "I wondered where he came from," he said to himself. Then he got up and quietly followed in Kintaro's footsteps. Leaving the rabbit and the bear behind, Kintaro was back on his own again, striding lightly across the valley and over the cliffs. Kintaro strode lightly across valleys and over cliffs and entered a house deep in the mountains. White clouds were welling up all around. The lumberjack then finally wriggled his way through the roots of the trees. Caught in the corner of a rock, the lumberjack followed him. When they finally reached the front of the house, the woodcutter looked inside. Kintaro was sitting in front of the hearth. Kintaro was sitting in front of the hearth, eagerly telling his mother, Yamamba, the story of how he wrestled with bears and deer. His mother smiled and listened with amusement. At that moment, the woodcutter snuck out and stuck his head out of the window. Here, little boy. Now let's wrestle with your uncle," he said as he strode in. And suddenly, he put out his hairy hand in front of Kintaro. Yamamba looked at him strangely, but Kintaro was amused. "Oh, I'll take a picture of it," he said, and immediately put out his shaggy, cute hand. So the two of them pushed each other around for a while, making bright red faces. Then the woodcutter suddenly said, "Let's go." The woodcutter suddenly said, "Let's go." Then he sat down again, bowed politely to Yamamba. "I'm sorry for interrupting. I'm sorry for interrupting, sir. I saw the boy push over a large cedar tree by the stream. I was so surprised that I followed him here. Now he's arm wrestling again, and I'm amazed at how strong he is. This boy is going to be a great volunteer." Now he turned to Kintaro and said, "What do you say? Boy, go to the capital and become a samurai? I want to go to the capital and become a samurai." Kintaro's eyes lit up. Kintaro's eyes twinkled and he said, "Oh, I hope I can become a samurai. This woodcutter I showed you, I am actually Sadamitsu Emamizu, the greatest general in Japan. He was a retainer of the famous Minamoto no Reiko, the greatest general in Japan. He was sent by his master to find a strong samurai. He roamed all over Japan like this." Yamamba was delighted to hear that. In fact, her late father was a samurai with the noble family name of Sakata. For some reason, he is buried in the mountains. If only there were a better opportunity. I would like to take him back to the capital one day and make him a samurai. I had hoped to make him a samurai and allow him to carry on the family name. If that's the case, I'm just a naughty boy, as you can see. I would be grateful for your kindness," he said, sounding very happy. Kintaro was happy to hear what they said. "I'm going to be a samurai." Kintaro was so happy to hear that Sadamitsu of Emamizu would finally take him to the capital. When he heard that Kintaro was finally going to the capital, the bears, deer, monkeys, and rabbits all came to say good day. Kintaro patted them on the head and told told them to play together in peace. Everyone misses Quintero. Quintero said, "Please hurry up and become a great general and show your face to us again." Quintero said, "Please become a great general soon and let me see your face again," and left. Quintero put his hand in front of his mother. Quintero put his hand in front of his mother and said, "Goodbye, mother," and he followed Sadamitsu out like the man he was. Then, after many, many days, Sadamitsu took Quintero back to the capital. Then he went to Reiko's house. "Deep in the Ashigara Mountains, I found this child. Quintero Reiko has seen him. Oh, this is a rare, strong-looking child," said Trice, rubbing Quintero's head. "But the name Quintero is not right for a samurai. If your father is Sekata, you may call yourself Kintoki of Sekata from now on." So Quintero took the name Kintoki of Sekata and became Reiko's retainer. And when he grew up, he became a great samurai. Katsuka Chayama by Miso Kosuya. Once upon a time, there was an old man and an old woman. The grandfather was always working in the fields. Then, a furry tenyuki appeared from the mountain behind the house. The grandfather was also at a loss, so he set a trap for it. One day, the tenyuki finally got caught in the trap. The grandfather jumped up in joy. He said, "Oh, you're a good tenyuki. I've finally caught you." He tied up the tenyuki's legs and carried it home. Then, at the temple, I hung it from a beam. I tied it up so the old woman wouldn't miss it. I'll make a tenyuki juru by the time I get back. And then, with the tenyuki tied up and hanging, the old woman took out the mill and started pounding wheat. After a while, she thought, "I'm exhausted. Why would someone like you help me when I untied the rope?" Instead of helping her, she ran away right away. "No, I'm already caught, so why would I run away now? Well, try letting it go." He's asking so persistently. The old woman seems to take the raccoon seriously, unties the rope and lets it go. Then the raccoon says, "Oh dear," and rubs his tied up legs. Then he says, "I'll help you," takes the old woman's pestle and pretends to pound wheat. Suddenly slams the pestle down from the old woman's pisho. Soon after, the old woman rolled her eyes, collapsed, and died. The tenyuki immediately cooked the old woman and made her some old hag soup instead of tenyuki soup, and disguised himself as the old woman. He sat in front of the stove, with his face on, waiting for the old man to come home. When evening came, the old man, unaware of anything, thought that he would be able to eat tenyuki soup that night and smiled to himself. He hurried to the tenyuki's old woman's house. "So this is delicious," he said, smacking his lips and asking for a second helping of Granny's soup. He became so absorbed in eating it. When the tenyuki grandmother saw this, she couldn't help but laugh, revealing the tenyuki's true identity on the cover. The old man who ate the granny. "Look at the bones under the sink," the tenyuki said as he stuck out his big tail and ran out the back door. The old man was so shocked and disappointed that he fainted. Then the old lady under the sink. He was crying and holding the bones of his father. Then the old man asked, "Grandpa, Grandpa, what's wrong?" Then the white rabbit from Ira Mountain came in. "Oh, it's the rabbit. Please come. Please listen. I've had a terrible experience," the old man said, and explained the whole story. The rabbit was very angry and said, "That was a terrible thing, but I'll definitely get revenge for you, so don't worry, he said confidently. The old man shed tears of joy and said, "Oh, please, please, I'm really frustrated and can't stand it. Don't worry, I'll lure the raccoon out tomorrow and make it a terrible experience." "Wait for a while," the rabbit said, and went back. Then the raccoon ran out of the old man's house, but he was scared, so he didn't go out anywhere and just stayed in the eel. Then one day, the rabbit, with his hat in his hands, he went to the hole where the tanuki was hiding, took out his hat, and repeatedly borrowed strawberries. While borrowing strawberries, he took out the chestnuts he had brought in his bag and munched away. The tanuki heard the sound and came out of the hole. "Rabbit, rabbit, what are you eating so deliciously? Can you give me some chestnuts?" "I'll give them to you. I'll carry half of this lawn to the mountain over there. Please go ahead." The tanuki wanted chestnuts, so he had no choice. He carried the grass on his back and walked ahead. When he reached the mountain on the other side, the tanuki looked back. "Rabbit, rabbit, can you give me a chestnut?" "Yes, I'll give it to you. If I go to the other mountain." He had no choice, so he walked ahead again. When he went to the other mountain on the other side, the tanuki looked back and asked the rabbit, "Rabbit, rabbit, can you give me a chestnut? Can you give it to me?" "Yes, I'll give it to you, but you'd better go to the other mountain as well. I'm sure I'll give it to you next time." So there's no other way, so the tanuki goes ahead again. This time he wants to get to the other mountain as quickly as possible. Without looking back, he walks away diligently. Yosede takes the time to pull out a flint from his pocket and starts to light the fire. The tanuki thinks it's strange and asks, "Yosede, what's that clattering thing?" "This mountain is a clattering mountain." "Okay, I see," says the tanuki, and starts walking again. The fire the rabbit had started soon spread to the grass on the raccoon's back, and it started to burn. The raccoon was also confused and asked, "Rabbit, rabbit, what does Bobo mean?" "Because the mountain over there is a Bobo mountain." "Oh, I see," the raccoon said, and the fire had already spread to his back. The raccoon ran off as fast as he could, screaming, "It's hot! It's hot! Help me!" The mountain wind came from behind. The raccoon cried out in pain, rolling around and finally shaking off the burning grass and running into his hole. The rabbit deliberately shouted loudly, "Oh, no! It's a fire! It's a fire!" and went home. The next day, the rabbit rubbed some chili pepper into the ram and made medicine, which he took to the raccoon. The raccoon was in the middle of his back. He was burned and rolled around in the pitch-black hole, groaning, "Tanuki-san, Tanuki-san, you really had a terrible experience yesterday. Oh, you really had a terrible experience with this big burn. I wonder how it's going to heal. I feel so sorry for you. So I brought you the most effective medicine for burns. Is that so? That's a great help. I'll have you applied it right away." The tanuki said this, and the rabbit looked at him and said, smiling, "What's up, Tanuki-san?" Well, the tingling sensation only lasts for a while, and then it goes away, so press your butt for a while, and then he goes back. Then he gets up on the ladder. One day the rabbit wonders what the tanuki is up to. Next time he'll take him out to the sea and give him a hard time. Then let's leave the Tanuki was jealous and copied him and made an earthen boat. Then the boat came out. When the rabbit got up, he got on the wooden boat. The Tanuki said, "That's great, that's fun." So they exchanged numbers 1, 2, 3 and started rowing away. The rabbit bent on the boat and said, "How is the wooden boat?" Then the Tanuki, not wanting to give up, bent on the boat and said, "Don't worry, the clay boat is heavy and sturdy." Slowly, the water started to seep in and the clay boat started to collapse. Oh no, the boat is collapsing. The Tanuki was shocked and started to make a fuss. "Oh, I'm sinking, help me." The rabbit watched the Tanuki panic with amusement and said, "Serves you right. Look, you tricked and killed the old woman and gave the old man a stinging bastard. That's revenge." The Tanuki said, "I won't do that again, so help me," and bowed to the rabbit. Soon the boat started to collapse, and before long the Tanuki was finished. In the story of Isyamboshi by Misao Kusuyama, a childless couple from Najawa in the province of Satsu visit the deity Sumiyoshi to pray for a child. Their wish is granted when the wife becomes pregnant and gives birth to a tiny baby boy, no bigger than a finger. They name him Isambashi, meaning one-dimensional man. As Isambashi grows older, he remains the same size, not growing taller than a finger even at the age of 16. Seeking opportunities in Kyoto, which he believes to be the greatest city in Japan, Isambashi asks his parents for permission to go there. They allow him, and he embarks on a journey armed with a sewing needle sword and a new bowl for food. Along the way, he faces challenges such as the boat tipping over in strong winds and rain. Eventually, he arrives in Kyoto and marvels at the bustling streets and lively atmosphere. Coming across a magnificent mansion, Isambashi approaches and calls for attention. The Prime Minister, who had intended to leave, hears his voice and comes to the door. Surprised by Isambashi's small stature, the Prime Minister hires him as a retainer. Impressed by his cleverness and wit, Isambashi befriends the minister's 13-year-old daughter, who is fond of him, and they become close. However, a misunderstanding causes the princess to be thrown out of the mansion. Feeling sorry for her, Isambashi accompanies her and faces challenges on an island. He uses his sewing needle sword to defeat ogres threatening the princess. As a reward, the princess gives Isambashi a magical hammer that can make him taller. Using the hammer, Isambashi grows into a fine young man. It is revealed that his ancestry is connected to great men, and he is given the name Shazu Horekoa by the angel song. With the princess and his newfound rank, Shazu Horekoa returns to Japan and receives the approval of the Seishodono. The story ends with the successful journey of Shazu Horekoa and the completion of the princess's story. Hanasaka Jiji Kusuyama. Once upon a time, there was an old man and an old woman. They were honest, good-natured old men and women. They had no children, so they took care of their dog, Shiro, as if he were their own child. Shiro was very attached to his grandparents. Then there was another old man and a woman next door. This one was a good-for-nothing old man and a bad-for-nothing old woman. So if they looked at the neighbor's back, and they were always doing mean things to each other. One day, Grandpa was digging in the field. digging in the field, and White followed him, sniffing and sniffing around. And suddenly, he pulled his grandfather's. He pulled him under a big enoki tree at the end of the field, and with his paws, he was digging up the earth with his paws and cried, "Dig here, dig 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 here," he cried. "What is it? What is it?" the grandfather said. "What is it? What is it?" Then there was a click, and there was a sparkle at the bottom of the hole. He dug deeper and deeper and found many small gold coins. The grandfather was so surprised that he called out to his grandmother in a loud voice and called for grandmother to come and help him, and carried the coban into the house. The honest old man and the honest old woman suddenly became rich. Too then, the greedy old man next door. The greedy old man next door was so envious that he came to borrow a white coat. To tell the truth, the old man was, "I'm a good person, so I'll lend you Shiro by accident." But the greedy old man didn't like it. He put a noose around White's neck and pulled him toward the field. "My field must be full of bags, too. Where is it?" he said, pulling harder and harder. Tuzero was so excited that he scratched at the earth everywhere. The old man said, "Oh, here it is. I've got it." He began to dig, saying, "I've got it." Then, in a fit of anger, out of the blue, he raised his hoe and shot Shiro in the head, and the poor Shiro screamed and squeaked, and he died. How sad it must have been for the old man, and grandmother must have felt so sad. But what was left to be done? They could not help it, so they took the white and pulled out the white body of and carefully placed it in a hole in the corner of the river. Then, instead of a cover, he placed a small pine tree on top of it. Then the pine tree began to grow. It grew and grew and grew until it became a big tree. This is a white man's body. Grandpa Koji cut down the pine tree and prepared a millstone. Then, because Shiro loved rice cakes, he put rice in the millstone, and he and his grandmother and started to make rice cakes with his grandmother. But the strange thing was that no matter how much rice they kept on, the rice gradually overflowed into the mortar and began to spill out into the open air, and spilling out into the open air. Soon there was a lot of rice in the bowl. 3 then again. The next-door neighbors, a greedy old man and woman, saw this, and they were so envious that they came again to ask for a millstone. The good-natured old man and the good-natured old man and the good-natured old woman again inadvertently let him borrow a water closet. After borrowing the water basin, they immediately became very happy. Grandpa put the rice in the mortar. And with Grandma as his partner, he began to pound the rice. But instead of the rice coming out, it started to smell bad again. Dirty stuff came out, overflowing into a mortar and spilling outside. It spilled outside, and soon the kitchen was filled. Soon the whole kitchen was full of filth. The greedy old man began to and smashed up the kitchen sink and even made it into a sieve. Honest Grandpa went to ask for the millstone to be returned. I was so surprised to see it turned into ashes. But what can be done? pie has been burned. Disappointed, he gathered up the ashes in the colander and went home. Grandmother, the white pine tree has turned to ashes. Plum trees and cherry trees, which had been standing there as dead trees, turned into flowers as soon as they were covered with the ashes. They blossomed in the middle of winter, while the rest of the world was still in the middle of winter. While the rest of the world was still in winter, Grandpa's garden was completely transformed into a spring scene. Grandpa clapped his hands in joy. This is interesting. Let's make the cherry trees bloom too. So the old man, with the empty colander, flowery grandpa, flowery grandpa, flowery grandpa. I am the most famous flower in Japan. Let's let the flowers bloom in the summer. And he went on his way. Then, from out of the distance, the lord of the Toto came riding on a horse, bringing with him many of his guests from the forest. He returned, and while saying, "Silver cherry blossoms, silver cherry blossoms," he grabbed a handful of ashes. Then the greedy old man from next door heard it. The neighbor's greedy old man heard this and was so envious that he gathered up the ashes and put them in a colander. He would then do as his grandfather had done and say, "Grandpa, Grandpa, 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 the best in Japan, the best in all of Japan. I will let the flowers bloom in the summer," said the old man with a loud voice. "Let's let the flowers bloom in the land of the dead." Then the original God came back. The other day, the old man came to him and said, "I'll make the flowers bloom again. Let me make your flowers bloom again." The old man looked very hungry, and he was holding a colander with a colander in his hand, and climbed up the cherry tree. And just as he had done, cherry blossoms, sarasara sarasara, Jen no sekura sarasara, sarasara sarasara. But here and there, he rubbed his eyes and sneezed. But here and there, they made a lot of noise, rubbing their eyes and sneezing and brushing the hair from their heads. The Lord became very angry and said, "He must be a fake old man." He said he was a very imprudent fellow, and he made the grandfather tie him up. The old man said, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." But at last he was taken to a wax shop. A Sparrow. Sparrow by Mesao Koshiyama. Once upon a time, there was an old man and an old woman. Because they had no children, the old man treasured a baby sparrow and kept it in a cage. One day, as usual, the old man went to the mountains, and the old woman was doing the laundry by the well. She forgot the sewage she was using for the laundry in the kitchen. While she was away, the baby sparrow ran out of the cage and licked up all the seaweed. The old woman returned to get the seaweed and said some of the seaweed was not clean. It was obvious that the sparrow had licked up all the seaweed. The mean old woman became very angry and caught the poor little sparrow, forcing it to open its mouth, and said, "What have you done to me?" She then cut off its tongue with scissors. Then she told it to go away wherever it wanted. The sparrow flew away crying in a sad voice, "It hurts, it hurts." In the evening, the old man returned from the mountain, carrying the grass on his back. "Oh, I'm so tired. The sparrow must be hungry too. So let's feed him," he said. He went to the cage, but there was no sparrow inside. The old man was surprised and asked, "Grandma, Grandma, place with a large bush. Then he heard a voice from inside the bush saying, "Shivery Sparrow, where is your lodge?" The old man happily walked towards the voice. Then, in the shadow of the bush, he saw a cute red house. The sparrow had already opened its eyes and was heading out the other way. "Oh, it's good to see you, old man. You're so safe and sound. I came to visit because I love you." "Oh, thank you so much. Come on over here." Saying this, the sparrow took the old man's hand and led him into the house. The sparrow put his hands in front of the old man and said, "I'm sorry, old man, for licking the precious seaweed. You didn't get angry. You came all the way here out of concern for me. And thank you so much for coming to see me." The old man then said, "I've done some really unfortunate things because I wasn't here, but I'm really happy to see you again." The sparrow said they gathered all the sparrows, including their siblings and friends, and treated the old man to a feast of his favorite foods. Then they all danced the sparrow dance to a funny song. The old man was so happy that he forgot to go home. Then it gradually got darker, so the old man said, "Thanks to you, today was a fun day." Before the sun went down, he said, "Now, let's go home." The sparrows thought, "Well, this is a scruffy place, but they're staying here tonight. Please, please." We all stopped him. "I'm sorry, but the old lady will be waiting. I'll be back today. I'll come again." "That's unfortunate, but I'll give you a souvenir. So please wait a little while," Zozium said, and brought 2 soldiers from the back. The old man said, "One heavy soldier and 1 light soldier. Please take whichever you like. Thank you for the meal and the souvenir. I'm sorry, but I'll take it and go home. But I'm getting older. I'll take the lighter one from Benji, who is far away." So the old man said, "I'll leave the lighter one, so I'll see you later. I'll be waiting for you. Please be careful and go home," said the sparrow, and saw the old man off to the gate. Even after the sun went down, the old man hadn't returned, so the old woman was muttering to herself, wondering where he had gone. When the old man came back with the souvenirs on his back, "Grandpa, where have you been up to now?" "So you were doing that. Well, it's not that bad. Today I went to the Sparrow Inn. I was treated to a lot of food and was shown the sparrow dance. And as you can see, I got a wonderful souvenir." As I put the box down, the old woman suddenly smiled and said, "Oh, that's great. I wonder what's in there." And then she opened the box right away, and from inside came a stunning egg of goldfish and holy. The old man was very surprised when he saw it. "Well, Zozoom gave me 2, a heavy one and a light one, and asked me which one I wanted. I'm old and the road is long, so I asked her to give me the light one, but I didn't expect it to have so many good things in it." Then the old woman suddenly pouted again and said, "You old fool, why didn't you get the heavy one? It would have had a lot more good things in it." "Well, you shouldn't be so greedy. If it has so many good things in it, isn't it a lot? Why are there so many?" "Okay, I'll go and get the heavy one for you." The old man didn't listen to her pleas and ran out the door without waiting until the morning of the next day. It was already completely dark outside, but the old woman was still hungry. In a single breath, she pounded her cane wildly, asking the sparrow, "Where is my house?" She opened the door again and came out. Then he kindly said, "Oh, it's you, Grandma. Welcome," and invited her into the house. Then he said, "Come on in, please," and tried to take the old lady's hand and lead her to the table. But the old lady just looked around in a hurry and didn't calm down or try to sit down. No, when he saw that you were safe and sound, he said, "That's all I need, so I won't bother you anymore." He should have just hurried up and said, "You're safe and sound, so I'll be happy to see you. Let's get some souvenirs and go home." The sparrow was surprised at the sudden collection of souvenirs, thinking that the old lady was greedy, but the old lady was fine with it. She said impatiently, "Come on, hurry up." Okay, please wait a little while. I'll bring you the souvenirs now, so I'll tell you." She took out her gift. "Now, I have two, a heavy one and a light one, so please take whichever you like." "Of course, I'll take the heavy one," the old lady said, and with a few greetings she left. The old lady was guarding the heavy satchel on her back. Though she had received a lot of gifts, it was getting heavier and heavier as she walked, until the old lady's shoulders came up and her hips were about to break. But even so, it was filled with more treasures than she had expected. I'm really looking forward to it. I wonder what kind of things are in it. I'll just wait a moment here. I'll take a break and try opening it a little. So I said to myself. I put the lid down on the stone by the roadside. I put the lid down with a sling, and I quickly opened the lid. And what do you think? The inside was covered in dazzling goldfish, and I was surprised to see a bunch of little ghosts, one-eyed little ones, Medudo, and other ghosts all slithering out. And they said, "You're a greedy old hag." They stared at me with scary eyes, or stuck out their creepy tongues and licked my face. The old woman no longer felt like she was alive. "It's terrible, it's terrible." She screamed for help and ran away as hard as she could. Then, when she finally ran back into the house, completely pale, the old man was shocked and asked what had happened. The old woman told him what had happened to her and said she'd had